The city's skyline gleamed against the fading evening light as Ethan Cole stood on the balcony of his penthouse. Below, Manhattan pulsed with life, horns blaring, lights flashing, and the distant hum of conversations rising into the air. Ethan leaned on the railing, his tailored suit unwrinkled, his polished shoes untouched by the grime of the streets below. Yet he felt detached, as though the city no longer belonged to him. Behind him, the sound of laughter drew his attention. Samantha Rivera, Sam as he called her, stood by the fireplace, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her laughter filling the room as she scrolled through her phone. She was beautiful, radiant even, with a kindness in her eyes that had captivated Ethan when they first met. But tonight, that kindness was not enough to quell his doubts. "Ethan," Sam called, noticing his distracted gaze. "What's wrong?" He smiled faintly and shook his head. "Nothing. Just thinking." Sam crossed the room, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet. "Well, don't think too hard. We've got reservations in an hour, and I'm not letting you bail on me this time." Her playful scolding made him chuckle, but it couldn't erase the question that lingered in his mind. Could she love him if he had nothing? The next morning, Ethan sat in his office, the city's chaos muffled by the soundproof windows of his 60th floor suite. The desk was immaculate, save for a framed photo of him and Sam, their smiles bright and carefree. Across from him, Nathan Porter leaned back in his chair, sipping his espresso with a knowing smirk. "You've got that look again," Nathan said, his sharp blue eyes studying Ethan. "The one that says, 'I'm overthinking my life decisions. Spill it.'" Ethan hesitated. Nathan had been his closest friend since college, the one person he could trust in a world of opportunists. If anyone could understand, oh, it was him. "Do you ever wonder if people like us can find real love?" Ethan asked. Nathan snorted. "Define real. Because if you mean unconditional, I think you're asking for a unicorn, my friend." "I'm serious," Ethan said, his tone heavier. "I've been burned before, Nathan. Every woman I've dated, they've loved the penthouse, the cars, the trips. But me? Just me? I don't know if Sam sees me or the life I provide." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "And you're sure this isn't your paranoia talking? Sam seems genuine." "She does," Ethan admitted. "But how can I be sure?" Nathan leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "If you're that desperate for answers, test her. Walk away from all of this. Strip yourself of the wealth, the fame, and see if she sticks around." Ethan chuckled bitterly. "You make it sound easy." "I didn't say it was easy. I said it was a test," Nathan replied. "And knowing you, you're probably crazy enough to try it." By the end of the day, the idea had rooted itself in Ethan's mind. He replayed Nathan's words, his doubts intensifying with each passing moment. That evening, as he stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, Ethan made a decision. If love could not withstand the weight of truth, it was not love at all. Over the next week, Ethan quietly began dismantling his public persona. Bank accounts were placed in trust. Luxury cars sold under the guise of downsizing. He arranged for Nathan to take over the company temporarily and worked with his legal team to prepare for his absence. On the eve of his departure, Ethan packed a single duffel bag. Inside were simple clothes, flannels and jeans, a stark contrast to his usual wardrobe. He glanced around the penthouse, taking in the opulence he was leaving behind. For a moment, doubt crept in, but he pushed it aside. Nathan arrived to see him off. "You're really doing this," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I have to," Ethan replied, his voice resolute. "I need to know. Just remember, Nathan said, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. You can't hide from the truth forever. Whatever you find out there, it's going to change you. Ethan nodded, his grip tightening on the bag. Let it. As the city lights faded behind him and the quiet hum of the countryside replaced the chaos, Ethan felt an unfamiliar sensation. Freedom. Yet he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that he was walking into the unknown, a place where even he couldn't control the outcome. The stage was set. The test had begun. The dawn broke over the rolling hills of Oregon, casting a golden glow over the small, sleepy town of Willow Creek. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and freshly tilled soil. Ethan Cole, or Eli Parker, as he was now calling himself, gripped the steering wheel of his second-hand truck, feeling an unfamiliar mix of apprehension and excitement. The truck, a battered old Ford he had bought with cash, chugged along the winding road. It was a far cry from the luxury sedans and sports cars he had once owned, but it served its purpose. Ahead, the town of Willow Creek appeared, a cluster of charming houses, a general store, and a church steeple peeking out from the trees. The simplicity of the scene was a stark contrast to the towering skyscrapers and ceaseless energy of Manhattan. Ethan parked in front of a weathered garage on the town's main street. The sign above read, Ben's Auto Shop, its paint peeling at the edges. A stocky man in his mid-50s emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a grease-stained rag. His face was rugged but kind, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he sized up Ethan. You must be the new guy, the man said, his voice gruff but welcoming. Name's Ben Harper. You're Eli, right? Ethan nodded, adjusting his cap. That's me. Thanks for taking me on, Mr. Harper. Call me Ben, the mechanic said, extending a calloused hand. And let's see if you can handle a wrench before you thank me. The two men stepped into the garage, the air thick with the smell of motor oil and metal. Ethan, who had spent his life in boardrooms rather than repair shops, felt a wave of self-doubt. But he was determined to adapt. For the first time in years, his hands got dirty. Not with contracts or financial statements, but with the grime of hard, honest work. After his shift, Ethan made his way to Claire's Diner, where he had rented a modest room upstairs. The building was a cornerstone of Willow Creek, its red and white checkered curtains a familiar sight to the locals. Claire Davidson, the diner's no-nonsense owner, was clearing tables when he walked in. You're late, she called, her sharp tone softened by the faintest hint of a smile. I thought big city folks knew how to keep a schedule. Ethan chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. Sorry, Miss Davidson. First day at the shop. Call me Claire, she said, handing him a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. And don't let Ben work you to death. He's got a habit of testing new hires. The room upstairs was sparse, a bed, a dresser, and a small desk by the window. Ethan sat down to eat, gazing out at the quiet town below. The simplicity of the scene was oddly comforting, though a part of him still felt out of place. Over the next few days, Ethan's awkward attempts to fit in provided endless amusement for the townsfolk. Whether he was fumbling with a wrench at the garage or tripping over his words while ordering coffee at the diner, his big city demeanor clashed hilariously with the laid-back charm of Willow Creek. One particularly memorable moment came when Lucy Harper, Ben's 16-year-old niece, stopped by the shop. A talented artist with a sharp wit, Lucy was quick to call Ethan out on his clumsiness. You don't know a carburetor from a coffee pot, do you? She teased, watching him struggle with a particularly stubborn part. Ethan laughed, shrugging. Guilty as charged. Guess I'm a work in progress. Lucy grinned. Don't worry. Uncle Ben's good at whipping people into shape. Despite the teasing, Ethan found himself drawn to the people of Willow Creek. There was Claire, who had a soft spot for the town's strays, both human and animal. Lucy, whose sketches of the town captured its quiet beauty. And Ben, who, despite his gruff exterior, treated Ethan like family. As the weeks passed, Ethan began to settle into his new routine. He woke early, worked long hours at the garage, and spent his evenings at the diner, listening to Claire's stories about the town's history. His hands grew calloused, his muscles ached, but for the first time in years, his accomplishments felt real. One evening, as he closed up the shop, Ben handed him a cold beer and gestured to the bench outside. The two men sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset. "You're doing good work, Eli," Ben said finally. "You've got a lot to learn, but you've got heart. That counts for something." Ethan smiled, raising his bottle in a silent toast. He couldn't help but feel a growing sense of pride, not for what he had, but for what he was becoming. With each passing day, Ethan found himself shedding the trappings of his old life. The suits and ties, the luxury cars, the constant pressure to perform. They all seemed like relics of a distant world. Here in Willow Creek, he was just Eli Parker, a man trying to find his place. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. His hands, once accustomed to the smooth touch of a keyboard, were now calloused and stained with grease. His conversations, once dominated by business jargon, were now filled with simple, heartfelt exchanges. And his heart, once guarded by layers of skepticism, began to open in ways he hadn't anticipated. Ethan knew that his journey was just beginning. The true test lay ahead, in the relationships he would build and the secrets he would have to keep. But for now, he allowed himself to embrace the quiet beauty of Willow Creek. The sound of laughter at the diner, the sight of Lucy sketching by the river, and the warmth of the community that was slowly becoming his own. One night, as Ethan lay in bed, he stared at the ceiling, his thoughts drifting to Sam. What would she think if she saw him now? Would she recognize the man beneath the dirt-streaked hands and flannel shirts? His phone buzzed on the nightstand, a message from Nathan lighting up the screen. "Hope you're surviving out there. Call me if you need a reminder of why you're doing this." Ethan set the phone down without replying. He couldn't risk breaking character. Not yet. But as he drifted off to sleep, the weight of his secret pressed heavily on his chest. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, Ethan Cole was building a new life. But how long could he keep his old one at bay? The first rays of sunlight peeked over the hills, bathing Willow Creek in soft golden hues. The town stirred to life with the hum of activity. Shop owners setting out their wares, children chasing each other along the cobblestone streets, and the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from Claire's diner. Among the familiar faces of the town was one that had only recently joined its tapestry: Rachel Carter. Rachel Carter had arrived in Willow Creek a month before Ethan's alias, Eli, had made his entrance. At 28, she carried an air of quiet resilience, her kind eyes betraying the battles she had fought. A former elementary school teacher in Portland, Rachel had left behind a promising career, a broken engagement, and the remnants of a life that no longer felt like hers. She sought solace in the simplicity of small-town life, taking up a teaching position at Willow Creek Elementary. Her mornings began early, often before the sun rose. Today was no exception. She stood in her modest kitchen, the rhythmic sound of her French press filling the silence. The aroma of coffee reminded her of home, of mornings spent with her mother before life had fractured into before and after. As she sipped her coffee, Rachel glanced at the calendar pinned to her fridge. Today marked the beginning of her school's art initiative, a project she had poured her heart into. A brush with community. aimed to encourage creativity among her students, with a grand showcase planned at the upcoming fall festival. The day began uneventfully until Rachel's car, an aging station wagon with a personality of its own, sputtered to a halt on the road leading to school. Frustrated but undeterred, Rachel got out and stared at the hood, as though willing it to fix itself. "Need some help?" The voice startled her. She turned to see Ethan, or Eli as he introduced himself, stepping out of an old truck, his hands already streaked with grease from the morning's work at Ben's auto shop. His eyes, bright and curious, met hers, and for a brief moment, Rachel felt a flutter she hadn't experienced in years. "That obvious?" she said, managing a sheepish smile. Ethan chuckled. "Well, unless you're just sightseeing under the hood." The humor was disarming. Together they inspected the car. And while Ethan worked, Rachel found herself opening up about her reasons for coming to Willow Creek. She spoke of the desire to start over, her passion for teaching, and her hope to find a sense of belonging. "Sounds like you've been through a lot," Ethan said, his voice laced with empathy. "Starting over isn't easy, but it sounds like you're already making a difference." Rachel tilted her head, studying him. "And what about you, Eli? What brought you to Willow Creek?" Ethan hesitated, his hands pausing mid-repair. "Oh, you know," he said lightly, "just looking for a change of pace. The city gets overwhelming." By the time Ethan had her car running again, the two had discovered a surprising ease in each other's company. Rachel offered him a heartfelt thank you and a promise of homemade pie at Claire's diner. That evening, as Rachel brought the pie to the diner, Claire raised an eyebrow. "You're spoiling him already?" "It's just a thank you," Rachel said, brushing off the comment. But as she handed the pie to Ethan, their fingers brushed, and the warmth lingered longer than either expected. Rachel's arrival in Willow Creek wasn't just about a fresh start. It was also an escape. Her father, Jonas Carter, had been a prominent businessman in Portland, a man whose rise to power came with sacrifices that ultimately drove a wedge between them. After her mother's death, the strain in their relationship deepened. Unbeknownst to most of the town, Jonas lived on the outskirts of Willow Creek, having retreated there after his financial empire crumbled under allegations of corruption. His reclusive nature and estranged relationship with Rachel remained a source of unspoken pain for both. Rachel had yet to reconcile with him, though the town's close-knit community often forced them into proximity. Every encounter was laced with tension, her father's gruff demeanor masking regret. "You'll have to face him eventually," Claire said one evening, as Rachel lingered in the diner after closing. "He's not getting any younger, and neither are you." Rachel sighed. "It's not that simple, Claire. Some wounds don't heal just because you want them to." The art initiative at Willow Creek Elementary became a beacon of hope, not only for the students, but also for Rachel. She poured her heart into the program, encouraging her students to express themselves. Among them was Lucy Harper, whose talent shone brightly. One afternoon, Rachel caught Lucy sketching Ethan, his focused expression, as he repaired a car. The drawing was uncannily detailed. "Lucy, this is amazing," Rachel said, genuinely impressed. Lucy shrugged, a shy smile spreading across her face. "He's easy to draw. There's something different about him." Rachel nodded, her own thoughts echoing Lucy's sentiment. Ethan, or Eli, was unlike anyone she had met, and yet something about him felt familiar, as though he too carried secrets he wasn't ready to share. As the weeks passed, Rachel and Ethan's paths continued to cross, their conversations growing deeper with each encounter. However, Ethan's guarded nature didn't escape her notice. His hesitations, the way he skillfully deflected questions about his past, It all hinted at something more. Meanwhile, Jonas Carter began to take an interest in his daughter's life, his regret over their estrangement pushing him to tentative attempts at connection. Watching Rachel thrive in Willow Creek filled him with pride, though he struggled to find the words to express it. One evening, as Rachel locked up the school after a late meeting, she found Jonas waiting outside. The sight of him, weathered and weary, struck a chord of vulnerability. "Rachel," he said, his voice rough but earnest, "can we talk?" Before she could respond, Ethan's truck pulled up, his presence a welcome but unexpected interruption. Jonas glanced at him, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Friend of yours?" Jonas asked, his tone guarded. Rachel hesitated, her gaze flicking between the two men. "Yes and no," she said softly, her heart caught in a whirlwind of emotions. As Ethan stepped out of the truck, the tension between the three was palpable. In that moment, it was clear that the past, present, and future were on a collision course, and Willow Creek was about to become the stage for a story of redemption, love, and unspoken truths. The small town of Willow Creek had a way of embracing its residents, making even the most transient feel as though they'd belonged forever. Ethan, under the guise of Eli Parker, had been steadily weaving himself into the fabric of the town's daily life. Yet, the deeper his ties grew, the more precarious his secret became, a fragile web that threatened to unravel with every passing day. While Ethan worked in the quiet solitude of Willow Creek, life in Manhattan was anything but tranquil. Nathan Porter, his trusted right-hand man, fielded questions from executives, journalists, and curious parties about Ethan's sudden disappearance. "I've told you, he's taking a sabbatical," Nathan repeated for what felt like the 100th time during a press call. "The man has poured his soul into this company for a decade. A break is well-deserved." Though Nathan spoke with conviction, he couldn't shake a growing unease. Ethan's absence left a vacuum in the company's leadership, and whispers of instability circulated in corporate circles. Among those whispers was the name Logan Price, a journalist notorious for his sharp instincts and dogged pursuit of the truth. Logan Price had been following Ethan Cole's career for years. Known for exposing scandals among the wealthy elite, Logan was drawn to Ethan's abrupt withdrawal from public life. His instincts told him there was more to the story, and he wasn't one to ignore a hunch. Researching Ethan's movements led Logan to a trail that dead-ended in Willow Creek. Intrigued by the possibility of uncovering a high-profile story, Logan booked a flight to Oregon. With a camera in one hand and a notebook in the other, he resolved to peel back the layers of this mystery. In Willow Creek, Ethan grew closer to Rachel, finding solace in their quiet moments together. But his secret weighed heavily on him, especially as Rachel began to ask more questions about his past. "What brought you here, really?" she asked one evening, as they walked along the edge of Willow Creek Lake. The water mirrored the golden hues of the setting sun, but the beauty of the moment was overshadowed by Ethan's hesitation. "I just needed a change," Ethan said, his voice trailing off. He turned the question back to her, deflecting attention from himself. "What about you? Why Willow Creek?" Rachel smiled wistfully. "I needed to escape, to find myself again. I guess we both came here searching for something." Her honesty only deepened Ethan's guilt. Every day he spent with her, he felt more conflicted about the deception he maintained. Logan arrived in Willow Creek under the guise of a travel writer. He checked into the town's modest inn and began his investigation, posing as a tourist interested in local stories. He visited Claire's diner, engaging the owner in casual conversation. "Willow Creek is such a charming place," Logan said, scribbling notes on a napkin. Any newcomers in town with interesting stories? Claire, ever the protector of her community, shrugged. A few folks come and go, but nothing out of the ordinary. Despite her vague response, Logan's sharp eye caught the flicker of recognition when he mentioned Ethan's alias, Eli Parker. He made a mental note to dig deeper. Back at the school, Rachel poured herself into the art initiative, finding joy in her students' creativity. However, her interactions with Ethan or Eli became increasingly clouded by doubt. His reluctance to share personal details didn't escape her notice. One afternoon, Rachel confided in Claire as they prepared for the fall festival. "There's something about him, Claire. I feel like he's hiding something." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Maybe he is. But isn't everyone to some extent? Give him time, Rachel. People open up when they're ready." Rachel nodded, but couldn't shake the nagging feeling that Ethan's secrets ran deeper than most. While Logan worked to uncover Ethan's identity, his snooping caught the attention of Detective Laura Green, a retired investigator who now volunteered in the community. Known for her sharp instincts, Laura had a knack for spotting trouble before it escalated. She approached Ethan at the garage one evening. "There's a man in town asking a lot of questions," she said, her tone casual, but her eyes serious. "Says he's a writer, but something about him doesn't sit right." Ethan tensed, wiping grease from his hands. "What kind of questions?" "About newcomers. About you." Laura fixed him with a pointed look. "If there's something you're not telling us, now's the time to speak up." Ethan forced a laugh. "I appreciate the warning, but I'm just a mechanic trying to make a living." Laura didn't press further, but her warning lingered in Ethan's mind. As the fall festival drew closer, Willow Creek buzzed with anticipation. The festival, known as the Festival of Lights, was a beloved tradition, marking the town's unity and resilience. Strings of lights illuminated the streets, and booths lined the square, showcasing local crafts and food. Rachel, determined to make the art initiative a highlight of the festival, enlisted Ethan's help in setting up the gallery. Together, they spent long hours preparing, their camaraderie growing with each task. But amid the laughter and shared moments, Ethan couldn't ignore the shadow of Logan's presence in town. The journalist had begun frequenting the garage, posing as a curious tourist, and Ethan knew it was only a matter of time before his cover was blown. The night before the festival, Ethan stood in his modest room above Claire's diner, staring out the window at the glowing lights of the town square. His heart was heavy with the weight of his double life. Downstairs, Logan sat at a corner booth, his camera hidden under his coat. He scrolled through photos he'd taken, including a candid shot of Ethan and Rachel laughing together. "This is it," Logan muttered to himself, his mind racing with plans to expose Ethan's true identity. Meanwhile, Rachel stood in her classroom, organizing the students' artwork. A sense of unease settled over her, though she couldn't explain why. She glanced at a sketch Lucy had drawn of Ethan, a portrait that seemed almost too perfect. As the clock struck midnight, the pieces were set in motion. Ethan's carefully constructed web of lies was on the verge of collapse, and the festival promised to be a turning point. For better or worse, Willow Creek was alive with anticipation as the morning sun bathed the town square in golden light. The annual Festival of Lights was a cornerstone of the community, and the townsfolk had outdone themselves. Lanterns hung from trees, booths brimmed with homemade crafts, and the scent of cinnamon and roasted chestnuts wafted through the crisp autumn air. Ethan, still juggling his alias as Eli Parker, had thrown himself into helping with the festival. He worked alongside Ben Harper to set up a makeshift repair booth, offering quick fixes for bicycles, tools, and even vintage lamps brought in by nostalgic locals. As the morning progressed, Ethan caught glimpses of Rachel moving gracefully between the art exhibit and the children's crafts section. Her laughter and warmth seemed to light up the entire square. For a fleeting moment, he felt at peace, until he spotted Logan Price lingering near the diner with his camera in hand. Logan Price wasn't a man who wasted time. Since his arrival in Willow Creek, he'd systematically worked to uncover the truth about Ethan's disappearance. His tourist facade allowed him to blend in, and his charm disarmed even the most skeptical locals. During the festival, Logan approached Claire at her diner booth, where she sold her famous apple pies. "Claire, this festival is incredible," he said, his tone casual. "Must bring everyone together." Claire smiled, her eyes narrowing slightly. "That's the idea. You're not from around here, are you?" "No, just passing through," Logan replied. He leaned in conspiratorially. "Tell me, who's the mechanic everyone's talking about?" "Eli Parker. He seems interesting." Claire's expression hardened. "Eli's a good man, hard-working. If you're looking for gossip, you won't find it here." Logan raised his hands in mock surrender. "Just curious, that's all." But Logan wasn't deterred. He had already gathered enough pieces to form a compelling picture. Ethan Cole, the tech mogul, had vanished from Manhattan and reappeared in this tiny Oregon town under a false identity. Now, Logan needed proof, a smoking gun to tie it all together. Rachel, meanwhile, couldn't ignore the growing tension she felt around Ethan. His kindness and genuine interest in her life made her heart swell, but his reluctance to open up about his past gnawed at her. During a quiet moment at the art exhibit, she confided in Claire. "Claire, have you ever felt like someone you care about isn't being entirely honest?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire, wiping her hands on a towel, gave Rachel a long look. "Everyone has their secrets, sweetheart. But the question is, do you trust him?" Rachel hesitated. "I want to, but something doesn't add up. It's like he's holding back." Claire placed a reassuring hand on Rachel's shoulder. "Give it time. The truth has a way of coming out when it's ready." Detective Laura Green, who had been observing Logan's movements, decided it was time to confront him. She found him near the festival's music stage, snapping photos of Ethan as he helped a young boy fix his bicycle. "You've been asking a lot of questions," Laura said, her tone sharp. "Mind telling me why?" Logan turned, feigning innocence. "I'm a travel writer, just documenting the charm of Willow Creek." Laura stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "I've seen enough to know you're no tourist. If you're here to cause trouble, you'll regret it." Logan smirked but said nothing, pocketing his camera. Laura's instincts told her that Logan was onto something big, but without concrete evidence, she couldn't act further. Still, her warning lingered in Logan's mind. As dusk settled, the festival transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights and laughter. Ethan found himself beside Rachel, helping her hang lanterns near the art exhibit. The proximity of her warmth and the sparkle in her eyes made his resolve to keep his secret waver. "You're good at this," Rachel said, her tone teasing. "Are you sure you weren't a decorator in your past life?" Ethan chuckled, the sound tinged with nervousness. "Let's just say, I've picked up a few skills along the way." Their conversation was interrupted by Lucy, who came bounding over with excitement. "Uncle Ben said I might win the art competition. Can you believe it?" "That's amazing," Rachel exclaimed, hugging the teenager. Ethan crouched to meet Lucy's eyes. "You've got this, kiddo. Your work speaks for itself." The moment was bittersweet for Ethan. He had grown attached to the people of Willow Creek, but Logan's presence was a constant reminder that his days of anonymity were numbered. As the evening wore on, the festival reached its peak with the lighting of the lanterns. Families gathered in the town square, holding glowing orbs that symbolized their hopes and dreams. Ethan stood beside Rachel, his heart pounding, as he prepared to make a decision. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice low. Before he could continue, Logan stepped forward from the crowd, a knowing smirk on his face. "Eli Parker, isn't it? Or should I say, Ethan Cole?" The square fell silent as all eyes turned to Logan. Rachel looked at Ethan, her expression a mix of confusion and hurt. "What is he talking about?" she demanded. Ethan's heart sank. The web of lies he had spun was unraveling before his eyes. "Rachel, I can explain." Logan didn't give him the chance. "Ethan Cole, the billionaire tech mogul, hiding out in this quaint little town. I've got the proof. Right here." He held up his camera triumphantly. The lanterns floated into the sky, their gentle glow a stark contrast to the tension that gripped the square. Rachel turned and walked away, tears streaming down her face. Ethan stood frozen, the weight of his deception crashing down on him. Logan's voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "This is going to make one hell of a story." Ethan clenched his fists, his mind racing with how to salvage the situation. But deep down, he knew there was no escaping the fallout of his choices. The fallout from Logan's bombshell lingered in the air like a storm cloud. The vibrant energy of the festival drained away, replaced by murmurs and skeptical glances. Ethan Cole, no longer just Eli Parker, the humble mechanic, stood exposed before the town. Ethan scanned the crowd for Rachel, but she was gone. His chest tightened as he recalled the pain in her eyes. He tried to step forward, but Logan blocked his path with a smug grin. "Quite the spectacle, isn't it?" Logan taunted. "How does it feel to be caught?" Ignoring him, Ethan pushed past and made his way toward the diner, hoping to find Rachel there. The town's residents parted in silence, their earlier warmth replaced by cold curiosity. Rachel had retreated to the quiet solitude of her classroom at Willow Creek Elementary. The dimly lit space, once a sanctuary for her, now felt suffocating. She sat at her desk, staring at the lantern she'd taken from the festival, a symbol of hope that now seemed hollow. "How could I be so blind?" she whispered to herself, her voice breaking. The sound of footsteps broke the stillness. Claire appeared in the doorway, her stern expression softening when she saw Rachel's tears. "He lied to me, Claire," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "I thought he was different." Claire walked over, pulling up a chair beside her. "People make mistakes, Rachel, sometimes big ones. But you need to ask yourself if his actions came from a place of malice or fear." Rachel shook her head. "It doesn't matter. He didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." "Maybe," Claire replied gently. "Or maybe he was afraid of losing you because of that truth." Meanwhile, Ethan paced the room above the diner, his mind racing. He thought about every choice that had brought him to Willow Creek, every moment he'd spent building this new life. And now, all of it was unraveling. Ben entered, his usual calm demeanor tinged with disappointment. "So, it's true then? You're some big-shot billionaire?" Ethan stopped pacing, meeting Ben's gaze. "Yes, it's true. But I swear I didn't come here to deceive anyone. I needed to escape my old life, to find something real." Ben crossed his arms, studying Ethan. "And did you?" Ethan's shoulders slumped. "I did. But now I've ruined it." Ben let out a heavy sigh. "You've got a lot to answer for, kid. But if you care about Rachel, you need to fix this." Ethan nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." Logan, pleased with his success, wasn't finished. Back in his rented room at the inn, he sorted through photos and notes, preparing to break the story. He smiled to himself, imagining the headlines, "Billionaire's double life in small town exposed." But his triumph was short-lived. Detective Laura Green knocked on his door, her badge gleaming under the hallway light. "Logan Price," she said sharply. "Mind telling me what you're really doing in Willow Creek?" Logan smirked, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Just doing my job." Laura stepped closer, her tone icy. "If your job includes harassment and trespassing, then we have a problem. The people in this town don't take kindly to being used." Logan's smirk faltered. "I'm not breaking any laws." "Not yet," Laura replied, her eyes narrowing. "But I'll be watching." Despite the tension, the festival's final event, the lantern ceremony, proceeded as planned. Families gathered near the riverbank, holding glowing lanterns inscribed with their hopes and dreams. The sight was breathtaking, a shimmering sea of light reflected in the water. Ethan arrived late, standing at the edge of the crowd. He spotted Rachel near the front, her lantern cradled in her hands. For a moment he hesitated, unsure if he had the right to approach her. Finally he stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Rachel," he said softly. She turned, her expression guarded. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," Ethan began. "I never meant to hurt you. I came here searching for something I thought I'd never find. And then I met you." Rachel's grip tightened on her lantern. "How am I supposed to believe anything you say now?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I can't ask you to trust me right away, but I'll do everything I can to earn it." Rachel looked away, her emotions warring within her. Without another word, she released her lantern into the river, watching as it drifted away. Ethan followed suit, whispering a silent prayer as his lantern joined hers in the current. Amid the night's tension, a brighter moment unfolded. Lucy Harper won first place in the art competition, her painting of Willow Creek under the stars, earning unanimous praise. Her joy was contagious, drawing smiles even from those still reeling from Ethan's revelation. "Uncle Ben, I did it," Lucy exclaimed, clutching her ribbon. Ben beamed with pride. "I always knew you could." Ethan congratulated her as well, though his smile was bittersweet. Seeing Lucy's triumph reminded him of the good he'd found in Willow Creek, a good he feared he might lose forever. As the night wound down, Rachel found herself walking alone along the riverbank. The sight of the floating lanterns brought a pang of longing to her heart. Ethan appeared a few steps behind her, keeping his distance. "Rachel," he called gently. She stopped, but didn't turn around. "What do you want, Ethan?" "To make things right," he said, his voice steady. "I don't expect you to forgive me tonight, or even tomorrow. But I'm not giving up on us." Rachel finally turned, her eyes searching his face. "Then prove it. Show me the man you claim to be." Ethan nodded, determination flaring in his chest. "I will." The morning after the Festival of Lights, the once friendly atmosphere of Willow Creek was heavy with tension. Rumors about Ethan's true identity spread like wildfire, sparking heated debates among the townsfolk. At Claire's diner, the regulars whispered furiously over their coffee. "Can you believe it?" one man muttered. "A billionaire hiding out here like some drifter? What was he trying to prove?" Ben Harper, sitting at the counter, slammed his mug down. "He's a good man, and he's done nothing but help this town. That's more than I can say for most." Others weren't so forgiving. "He lied to all of us," a woman retorted. "How can we trust someone like that?" Meanwhile, Rachel Carter struggled with her own feelings. She avoided the garage, skipped her usual breakfast at the diner, and buried herself in work. But no matter how hard she tried, thoughts of Ethan, his betrayal and his sincerity, lingered in her mind. In a dark hotel room on the outskirts of town, Logan Price reveled in his success. Photos of Ethan and Rachel were spread across his desk, along with notes about the festival. Logan made a call to Manhattan. "Nathan Porter," he said smoothly when the other line picked up. "I trust you've seen the news." Nathan's voice was cold. "What do you want, Logan?" "Let's just say I have more information that could ruin Ethan's reputation entirely. But I'm a reasonable man. A generous offer might convince me to keep this quiet." Nathan gritted his teeth. "You're playing a dangerous game." Logan chuckled. "Danger, oh, it is my specialty. I'll give you 48 hours to think it over." Nathan hung up, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't let Logan destroy everything Ethan had built, not just for the company, but for Willow Creek. Rachel decided to confront her father, Jonas Carter, about the nagging questions that had been haunting her. She found him in his small, cluttered workshop, tinkering with an old clock. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "did you know about Ethan?" Jonas looked up, his face lined with age and regret. "I had my suspicions, but I didn't know who he really was until last night." Rachel's frustration boiled over. "Why didn't you warn me?" Jonas sighed heavily. "Because I saw the way he looked at you, Rachel. I thought, maybe this time, it was different." Rachel sat down, her anger giving way to confusion. "I don't know what to believe anymore." Her father reached out, placing a hand on hers. "Believe in what you feel, not what others say. But don't let anger cloud your judgment. Everyone deserves a chance to make things right." Back in Manhattan, Nathan decided to act. He called Ethan, who answered on the second ring. "Ethan," Nathan said urgently, "we have a problem. Logan's trying to blackmail me. He's threatening to release more dirt on you." Ethan sighed. "Of course he is. What does he want?" "Money," Nathan replied. "But I don't trust him to back off, even if we pay." Ethan's voice hardened. "Let him do his worst. I'm not hiding anymore." Nathan hesitated. "Ethan, this isn't just about you. Rachel's name is in the mix. Are you prepared for what that might do to her?" Ethan's chest tightened. "I'll protect her, no matter what." Determined to make amends, Ethan spent the day helping around town. He repaired a broken fence at the community garden, donated supplies to the school, and even assisted Claire with an overdue renovation at the dine. But his biggest gesture came when he stopped by the Harper garage. He handed Ben an envelope, his expression earnest. "What's this?" Ben asked warily. "An investment," Ethan said. "I want to help expand the garage so you can take on more apprentices and provide more jobs." Ben studied him for a long moment. "You're trying to buy forgiveness?" "No," Ethan replied firmly. "I'm trying to show that I care about this town and the people in it." Ben finally nodded. "You've got a long way to go, but this is a start." That evening, Rachel finally sought out Ethan. She found him at the riverbank, skipping stones into the water. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, his face lighting up with a mix of hope and apprehension. "Rachel," he said softly. She crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Ethan exhaled deeply. "Because I was scared. Scared that if you knew who I really was, you'd see me the way everyone else does. A paycheck, not a person." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "And yet, you lied. That's not the mark of someone who trusts." "I know," Ethan admitted. "And I'm sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make it up to you." Rachel's voice wavered. "You've hurt me, Ethan. But I see the good in you too. I just don't know if it's enough." While Ethan and Rachel talked, Logan's schemes unraveled. Detective Laura Green had been quietly gathering evidence of his activities, and she arrived at the inn with a warrant. Logan was taken into custody, his smug demeanor faltering. "You can't arrest me. I haven't done anything illegal." Laura smirked. "Not yet. But extortion is a serious crime, Mr. Price, and I've got enough to keep you off Ethan Cole's back." News of Logan's arrest spread quickly, and the town began to see Ethan's situation in a new light. For many, his willingness to stay and face the fallout earned their respect. Later that night, Ethan knocked on Rachel's door. She hesitated before letting him in, her walls still up, but slightly softened. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet," she said, her tone firm. Ethan nodded. "I understand, but I'm not giving up on us, Rachel. Not now, not ever." She studied him for a long moment before finally speaking. "Then prove it. Not with money or grand gestures, just be honest. Be real." "I will," Ethan promised. As he left, Rachel watched him go, her heart torn between caution and hope. The day began quietly in Willow Creek, with the gentle hum of life carrying on. As usual, Rachel prepared for her morning classes, her thoughts scattered as she replayed her conversation with Ethan from the previous night. Despite her lingering anger, she couldn't deny the sincerity in his eyes or the pain in his voice. Meanwhile, Ethan immersed himself in work at the garage. He tried to focus on the cars that needed fixing, but his mind kept drifting to Rachel. He knew he was on thin ice, and that earning back her trust would take more than just words. Unbeknownst to them, a storm was brewing, one that would change everything. Although Logan Price had been arrested, his earlier efforts to expose Ethan had set events in motion. Before his capture, Logan had sent a damning article about Ethan's hidden identity and his connection to Rachel to a major Manhattan publication. The article painted Ethan as a manipulative billionaire who used Rachel and the town as pawns in his social experiment. By mid-morning, the article was published. The sensational headline spread like wildfire across social media. "Billionaire in disguise. Ethan Cole's secret life in small-town America." Back in Willow Creek, the townsfolk were stunned. Phones buzzed with notifications, and whispers filled the air as neighbors read the shocking revelations. Rachel's phone lit up with messages from friends in Portland asking if the article was true. Confused and hurt, she rushed to Claire's diner, where a crowd had gathered. The atmosphere was tense, and when Ethan entered, all eyes turned to him. "Is it true?" Claire's voice cut through the murmurs as she stepped forward, her arms crossed. "Did you lie to all of us?" Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their gazes. "Yes," he admitted, his voice steady but filled with regret. "I lied about who I was, but I never lied about how much I care about this town and the people in it." The crowd erupted into a flurry of voices, some condemning him, others defending him. Ben Harper stepped forward, raising his hand to quiet the noise. "Let him speak," Ben said firmly. Ethan took a deep breath and continued. "I came here because I wanted to see if I could find a life that wasn't defined by money or power. I didn't expect to find a community that reminded me of what really matters. And I definitely didn't expect to fall in love." His eyes searched the crowd until they landed on Rachel. She stood at the back, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her expression was unreadable, but her presence gave him the courage to go on. "I know I've hurt people," Ethan said, his voice breaking slightly. "And I'm truly sorry, but I'm not leaving. I want to make things right, if you'll let me." After Ethan's confession, Rachel couldn't take it anymore. She turned and walked out of the diner, her emotions swirling in a storm of betrayal and confusion. Ethan followed her, calling out her name. "Rachel, please, he said, catching up to her outside. She spun around, her eyes blazing. How could you do this? How could you lie to me and to everyone here? I didn't mean to hurt you, Ethan said desperately. I didn't know how else to find out if someone could love me for who I really am. Rachel shook her head, tears streaming down her face. But that's just it, Ethan. I did love you. I loved the man who fixed my car, who helped Lucy with her art, who worked late nights at the garage. I loved the man I thought you were. Ethan reached for her, but she stepped back. Rachel, that man is me. Everything I felt for you. It's real. I need time, she said, her voice trembling. Time to figure out if I can ever trust you again. Determined to take responsibility for his actions, Ethan called for a town meeting that evening in the community center. Despite their anger and hurt, nearly everyone showed up, curious to hear what he had to say. Standing at the podium, Ethan addressed the crowd with raw honesty. I know many of you feel betrayed, and you have every right to. I came here under false pretenses, but what I've found in Willow Creek is more real than anything I've ever known. This town has given me a second chance at life, and I don't want to lose that. He paused, looking around the room at the familiar faces. If there's anything I can do to make amends, please tell me. I'll work to earn your trust back, no matter how long it takes. To his surprise, Ben Harper stood and spoke up. You've made mistakes, Ethan, but you've also done a lot of good for this town. I, for one, think you deserve a chance to prove yourself. Slowly, others began nodding in agreement. While the crowd was still divided, a small glimmer of hope began to shine. As the town grappled with the fallout, Rachel sought solace in her father, Jonas. They sat on the porch of his small home, the autumn leaves rustling around them. I don't know what to do, Dad, Rachel admitted. Part of me wants to forgive him, but I'm so afraid of being hurt again. Jonas placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, Rachel. It's about finding peace. And sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who teach us the greatest lessons. Rachel pondered his words, feeling a flicker of clarity amidst her turmoil. Ethan spent the following days quietly working to rebuild his relationships in the town. He helped Claire with her diner renovations, assisted Ben at the garage, and even volunteered to organize the upcoming charity drive. Rachel watched from a distance, her heart softening as she saw the sincerity in his actions. She wasn't ready to forgive him yet, but she couldn't deny that Ethan was trying. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan found Rachel sitting by the riverbank. He approached cautiously, his heart pounding. Rachel, he began, his voice trembling. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I need you to know that I'm not giving up on us. Rachel looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and hope. I'm not ready yet, Ethan. But maybe, someday. It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a start. And for Ethan, that was enough to keep fighting for the love he had almost lost. The days following Ethan's public apology were a whirlwind of emotions for Rachel. Her heart was a battlefield, torn between the love she still felt for Ethan and the betrayal that lingered in her mind. At night, she found herself replaying every moment they had shared, wondering if any of it had been real. She sought comfort in her classroom, pouring her energy into her students. One day, while tidying up after school, Lucy stopped by with a small gift, a drawing of Rachel and Ethan, smiling together at the fall festival. I thought you might like this, Lucy said shyly. Rachel's heart ached at the sight of the drawing. Thank you, Lucy, she whispered, holding back tears. Don't give up on him, Lucy added quietly. Sometimes people make mistakes because they're scared. Meanwhile, Ethan devoted himself to rebuilding his reputation in Willow Creek. He spent every waking hour finding ways to contribute to the town. He fixed fences for neighbors, helped Claire revamp her diner menu, and even volunteered at the local library. Despite his efforts, he knew that winning back Rachel's trust would be his biggest challenge. Late at night, he would sit on the porch of his rented room, staring at the stars and thinking of her. One evening, Ben joined him, handing him a cold beer. "You've got your work cut out for you," Ben said, sitting down next to him. "But I can see you're trying." Ethan nodded. "I just don't know if it'll ever be enough." Ben took a long sip of his beer. "The only way to find out is to keep showing up. Actions speak louder than words, kid." Rachel's father, Jonas, had been watching the events unfold from the sidelines. For years, he had lived with the regret of abandoning his family for the pursuit of wealth. Seeing Ethan's public reckoning struck a chord in him. One evening, Jonas invited Rachel over for dinner. As they ate, he shared a story she had never heard before. A story of how he had lost everything when his business collapsed. "I was so ashamed," Jonas admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "I thought leaving was the best way to protect you and your mom from my failure. But I was wrong." Rachel listened intently, her heart softening as she saw her father in a new light. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "people make mistakes. What matters is what we do to make up for them." Jonas smiled, his eyes glistening with tears. "That's what I've been trying to do. And maybe Ethan deserves that chance too." Back in Manhattan, Nathan had been working tirelessly to protect Ethan's company from the fallout. The board members were anxious, and the stock value had taken a hit. Nathan knew that a bold move was needed to turn the tide. Ethan agreed to hold a press conference to address the controversy head-on. Standing before a room packed with reporters, he took a deep breath and began. "I came to Willow Creek, searching for something I had lost," Ethan said, his voice steady but emotional. "I wanted to see if I could live a life where I wasn't defined by my wealth. In the process, I made mistakes that hurt people I cared deeply about." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. "To the people of Willow Creek, and to Rachel, I am sorry. I will spend the rest of my life proving that my actions, not just my words, are worthy of forgiveness." The press conference sparked a wave of public support. Social media lit up with messages of empathy and admiration for Ethan's honesty. Stocks began to stabilize, and investors expressed confidence in his leadership. Rachel watched the press conference from her father's living room. As she listened to Ethan's heartfelt apology, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Could she really give him another chance? Jonas, sitting beside her, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes, taking a risk is worth it, Rachel." Ethan returned to Willow Creek with renewed determination. He approached Rachel cautiously, knowing that trust would take time to rebuild. One afternoon, he found her by the riverbank, the same spot where they had shared so many conversations. "Rachel," he began, his voice filled with sincerity, "I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to show you that I'm not giving up." Rachel turned to him, her expression unreadable. "It's not about giving up, Ethan. It's about proving that I can believe in you again." "I understand," Ethan said, "and I'll keep proving it, for as long as it takes." As Ethan worked to repair his relationships, the townsfolk began to see the depth of his commitment. Ben, Claire, and Lucy became his strongest supporters, vouching for his character at every opportunity. The charity fair Rachel had planned became a turning point. Ethan threw himself into the preparations, building booths, organizing events, and even creating a scholarship fund for local students. On the day of the fair, The townspeople saw a different side of Ethan, a man who wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty and who genuinely cared about their community. Rachel, watching from a distance, felt her heart begin to thaw. She saw the way Ethan interacted with Lucy, encouraging her to showcase her art, and the way he comforted a child who had scraped his knee. As the fair wound down, Ethan approached Rachel, who was sitting by the fountain, watching the sun set over the town. He sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Rachel," he said softly, "I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight, but I hope we can take the first step." Rachel looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Ethan, I can see how hard you're trying, and maybe that's enough to start." Ethan's heart soared. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice trembling. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat together in silence, a tentative but hopeful beginning to a new chapter. Ethan woke up before dawn, the faint glow of the rising sun casting a golden hue over Willow Creek. The events of the charity fair lingered in his mind, filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. Rachel's tentative forgiveness was a glimmer of hope, but he knew the journey to fully earn her trust, and that of the town, was far from over. His first step was to turn his words into action. He met with Ben and Claire to discuss ways to support the community. Sitting in the back room of Claire's diner, over steaming cups of coffee, the three brainstormed initiatives to revitalize the struggling town. "We could use a proper community center," Claire suggested, "somewhere kids can go after school, and adults can hold events." "And maybe a scholarship program," Ben added. "Lucy's not the only one here with potential." Ethan nodded, taking notes. "I'll fund it all, but I want the community to be involved every step of the way. This isn't about me swooping in to save the day. It's about building something together." Over the next few weeks, Ethan worked tirelessly to establish the Willow Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting small towns like Willow Creek. He enlisted the help of Nathan, who flew in from Manhattan to lend his expertise. Nathan was impressed by Ethan's transformation. "I barely recognize you, buddy," he teased. "You've gone from boardroom shark to small-town hero." Ethan chuckled. "Let's just say this place has a way of grounding you." Together, they filed paperwork, met with local leaders, and secured permits. The foundation's first project was a multi-purpose community center, complete with a library, art studio, and recreation hall. Rachel observed Ethan's efforts from a distance. She saw him helping build playground equipment, hauling bricks for the community center, and organizing meetings with the townsfolk. His dedication was undeniable, but she remained guarded, unwilling to let her heart fully trust him again. One evening, Jonas visited Rachel at her cozy home. They sat on the porch, sipping tea and watching the fireflies dance in the twilight. "You've been quiet lately," Jonas remarked, studying his daughter's expression. Rachel sighed. "I see how hard Ethan is trying. Part of me wants to believe he's changed, but what if it's all temporary?" Jonas nodded thoughtfully. "You know, people don't change overnight, but what matters is consistency. He's showing you who he wants to be. The question is, can you meet him halfway?" The day of the community center's grand opening arrived, and the entire town gathered to celebrate. Banners hung from the entrance, and tables overflowed with homemade pies, casseroles, and desserts contributed by the townsfolk. Ethan stood on a makeshift stage, addressing the crowd. His voice carried a blend of humility and determination. "Willow Creek has given me more than I ever expected," he began. "This community welcomed me when I was at my lowest. You didn't care about who I was or what I had. You cared about the person I could become. This center is just the beginning of what I hope to give back." The applause that followed was thunderous. Ethan stepped down, shaking hands and sharing smiles with the people who had become his second family. That evening, Rachel found Ethan sitting by the riverbank, skipping stones across the water. She approached quietly, her heart pounding. "That was a beautiful speech," she said, breaking the silence. Ethan turned, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "Thanks. I meant every word." Rachel sat beside him, hugging her knees to her chest. "I see what you're doing for this town. It's inspiring." Ethan hesitated before speaking. "Rachel, I'll never stop trying to earn your trust. But I also know I can't rush it. Take us all the time you need." Rachel studied his face, searching for any trace of insincerity. All she found was honesty. "You're different now," she admitted. "And I think I'm ready to start over." Slowly. Ethan's heart swelled with hope. "I'll take it," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. While Ethan worked on the larger projects, Nathan and Lucy became integral to the foundation's success. Nathan used his business acumen to streamline operations, while Lucy spearheaded an initiative to bring art programs to local schools. During one meeting, Lucy presented her plans to the board. "Art isn't just about creativity," she explained. "It teaches problem-solving, self-expressions, and confidence. I want every kid in Willow Creek to have access to that." Ethan beamed with pride as the board unanimously approved her proposal. "You're a natural leader, Lucy," he said afterward. Lucy blushed. "I had good role models. Logan Price, the journalist who had nearly exposed Ethan's secret, returned to Willow Creek with a surprising offer. After witnessing the impact of Ethan's work, Logan decided to write a feature story, not about the scandal, but about the transformation of Willow Creek. "I got it wrong," Logan admitted to Ethan. "Your story isn't about deception. It's about redemption. I want to help tell it." Ethan agreed, on the condition that the article focus on the town's resilience, rather than his personal journey. The resulting feature brought national attention to the Willow Foundation, sparking donations and partnerships from across the country. As the foundation flourished, Rachel found herself drawn to Ethan once more. She saw how his actions aligned with his words, and she began to trust him again. One evening, she surprised him at the community center. He was working late, surrounded by blueprints and paperwork. "Ethan," she said softly, "I've been thinking. Maybe it's time we stop walking on eggshells around each other. If we're going to move forward, we need to do it together." Ethan looked up, his heart skipping a beat. "Are you saying?" Rachel smiled. "I'm saying I'm ready to give us another chance." With Rachel by his side, Ethan felt unstoppable. The Willow Foundation launched new initiatives, including a small business incubator and a healthcare fund for underserved communities. Ethan's journey of redemption inspired not only the people of Willow Creek, but also those in towns facing similar struggles. Rachel, too, found new purpose. She became a driving force behind the foundation's educational programs, combining her teaching expertise with Ethan's vision. As they stood together at the foundation's headquarters, watching the town they loved thrive, Ethan took Rachel's hand. "Thank you for believing in me," he said. Rachel squeezed his hand. "Thank you for proving I could." The chill of early spring hung in the air as Ethan and Rachel walked hand in hand through Willow Creek. The community center, now a lively hub of activity, stood as a beacon of the town's resilience and transformation. Children laughed as they painted murals, teenagers rehearsed a play, and seniors shared stories over coffee in the reading lounge. Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how far the town and his own life had come. "It feels surreal," he admitted, glancing at Rachel. All of this started as an experiment, and now it feels like home. Rachel smiled warmly. Because it is home, Ethan. Not just for you, but for everyone you've helped. The Foundation's next major project was the expansion of Ben's Garage and Claire's Diner into community hubs. The garage would double as a vocational training center, teaching automotive and mechanical skills to locals. Claire's Diner, already a gathering place, would be renovated to include a small library and meeting space. Ethan worked closely with Ben to plan the garage's expansion. Together, they designed a curriculum that combined hands-on training with mentorship programs. "We'll need volunteers to teach," Ethan said during one planning session. "What do you think, Ben?" Ben scratched his head thoughtfully. "I might know a few retired mechanics who'd jump at the chance." Meanwhile, Claire took charge of the diner renovation. She worked with Rachel to curate a selection of books and resources that would benefit the community. "This isn't just about food," Claire said, placing a hand on her hip as she surveyed the space. "It's about feeding the mind and soul." As the garage expansion got underway, Lucy's confidence blossomed. Her art scholarship had not only validated her talent, but also inspired her to give back. She volunteered to lead art classes for kids at the community center, sharing her passion with the next generation. One afternoon, Ethan joined one of Lucy's classes, watching as she guided the children through a painting exercise. "You're a natural," Ethan said, admiring her patience and encouragement. Lucy beamed. "I had a good mentor. You taught me that it's not about where you start, but where you're willing to go." Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "And you've gone far, Lucy. Don't stop." As Ethan focused on the Foundation's expansion, Rachel stepped into a leadership role. She spearheaded the creation of a mentorship program for young teachers, bringing in experts to provide training and support. During a town meeting, Rachel presented her vision. "Education isn't just about textbooks," she said passionately. "It's about inspiring curiosity, building confidence, and creating opportunities." Her speech earned thunderous applause, solidifying her position as a leader within the community. Despite their progress, not everything was smooth sailing. Ethan and Rachel's relationship faced challenges as they navigated their new roles and responsibilities. Late nights and conflicting schedules left little time for each other, and old fears occasionally resurfaced. One evening, as they sat together on the porch of Ethan's modest home, Rachel voiced her concerns. "Sometimes I wonder if we're moving too fast," she admitted. "We've been through so much, and it's not always easy to forget the past." Ethan reached for her hand. "I understand, Rachel, but I don't want to let fear hold us back. We've both changed, and I believe in what we're building together." Rachel nodded, her gaze softening. "I believe in us too, Ethan. I just need time." To celebrate the completion of the garage and diner renovations, the town held a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The event drew a crowd of locals, journalists, and even state officials intrigued by Willow Creek's transformation. Ethan stood beside Ben and Claire as they cut the ribbons, their smiles radiant with pride. Rachel watched from the crowd, her heart swelling with admiration for the man Ethan had become. During the ceremony, Ethan gave a heartfelt speech. "This isn't just about buildings," he said. "It's about people, about creating opportunities, fostering connections, and building a future where everyone has a chance to thrive." The applause that followed was deafening. That night, Ethan and Rachel found themselves alone under the stars, the town's festivities still echoing faintly in the distance. Rachel turned to Ethan, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "I've been holding on to the past for too long," she admitted. "But tonight, watching you with the town, I realized something. You've earned my trust, Ethan, not just with your actions, but with your heart. Ethan's breath caught. Does this mean? Rachel smiled, her expression tender. It means I'm ready to fully let you in. Ethan pulled her into his arms, his heart brimming with gratitude. Thank you, Rachel. I promise I'll never give you a reason to doubt me again. Back in Manhattan, Nathan was hard at work, expanding the Willow Foundation's reach. During a video call with Ethan, he proposed an ambitious idea. What if we replicate the Willow Creek model nationwide? Nathan suggested. There are so many towns out there that could benefit from what we've done here. Ethan was intrigued. It's a massive undertaking, but I think we're ready. Let's do it. As the foundation prepared to expand, Ethan and Rachel found themselves more aligned than ever. They worked side by side, balancing their professional and personal lives with newfound harmony. One evening, as they walked through the community center, Ethan paused to admire the mural Lucy had painted on the wall. It depicted the town's journey, from its struggles to its triumphs. This place has changed me, Ethan said, his voice filled with emotion. I came here searching for something I thought I'd lost, but I found so much more. Rachel squeezed his hand. And together, we'll keep building, one step at a time. The first snow of the season had dusted Willow Creek with a blanket of pristine white, transforming the small town into a winter wonderland. The streets were adorned with twinkling lights, and the air was filled with the scent of pine and freshly baked goods from Claire's diner. Ethan stood at the edge of the town square, his breath visible in the crisp air. His mind raced with anticipation and nerves as he clutched a small velvet box in his pocket. Today was the day he would ask Rachel to take the next step with him, a step he had dreamed of ever since their paths first crossed. Ethan had planned every detail meticulously. He enlisted Lucy's help to create a winter-themed art installation in the woods, blending Rachel's love of nature with her passion for creativity. Ben and Claire were in on the secret, offering their support by keeping Rachel distracted with errands around town. As the sun began to set, casting an amber glow across the snowy landscape, Ethan made his way to the woods. The path was lined with lanterns, their soft light guiding the way to the clearing where Lucy's masterpiece awaited. The centerpiece was a delicate sculpture made of ice and intertwined branches, adorned with glimmering fairy lights. Surrounding it were panels of canvas, painted with scenes from Rachel and Ethan's journey. Moments captured in art, from their first meeting at the garage to the Festival of Lights and the community projects they had built together. Ethan smiled, imagining Rachel's reaction. Perfect, he whispered, taking a deep breath to calm his nerves. Meanwhile, Rachel was oblivious to Ethan's plans. Claire had asked her to stop by the diner to pick up an order, claiming she needed extra help for an upcoming event. As Rachel bundled up in her coat and scarf, she felt a sense of warmth despite the cold. When she arrived at the diner, Claire greeted her with a knowing smile. Change of plans, she said, handing Rachel a note. Ethan left this for you. Rachel unfolded the note, her heart skipping a beat as she read his words. Meet me at the trailhead by the old oak tree. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Intrigued, Rachel made her way to the trail, where she found the lanterns glowing softly in the twilight. She followed their path, her footsteps crunching in the snow, until she reached the clearing. As Rachel stepped into the clearing, her breath caught at the sight before her. The ice sculptures sparkled under the lights, and the painted panels seemed to tell their story in vivid detail. At the center of it all stood Ethan, his hands nervously tucked into his coat pockets. Ethan, Rachel breathed, her voice filled with wonder. What is all this? Ethan stepped forward, his eyes locking onto hers. It's for you, Rachel. For us. This place. It's where I found myself again. Where I found you. And I want it to be the place where we begin the rest of our lives. Before Rachel could respond, Ethan dropped to one knee, pulling the velvet box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a simple but elegant ring, its design inspired by the snowflakes that surrounded them. Rachel Carter, he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You've shown me what it means to love and be loved, to build something real and lasting. I don't want to imagine my life without you. Will you marry me? Tears welled in Rachel's eyes as she took in the moment. The memories of their journey together, the laughter, the struggles, the forgiveness flashed through her mind. She smiled through her tears, nodding as she spoke the words Ethan had been longing to hear. Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times. Yes, the clearing erupted in cheers and applause as Lucy, Ben, Claire, and a handful of other townsfolk emerged from the trees. They had been waiting in the wings, eager to celebrate the couple's big moment. Lucy ran up to Rachel, throwing her arms around her. I knew you'd say yes, she exclaimed. Ethan was so nervous he couldn't even eat this morning. Rachel laughed, wiping her tears. I'm glad he didn't lose his nerve. Ben clapped Ethan on the back. Welcome to the family, kid. You've earned it. Ethan grinned, feeling a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. Thanks, Ben. It means the world to me. The group returned to Claire's diner, where a cozy celebration awaited. The room was decorated with garlands and twinkling lights, and the aroma of hot cocoa and freshly baked cookies filled the air. As the townsfolk gathered to toast the happy couple, Ethan and Rachel shared a quiet moment by the window. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily to the ground, and the glow of the lanterns lit up the night. I can't believe you planned all this, Rachel said, leaning into Ethan's embrace. It's perfect. Ethan kissed her forehead. You deserve nothing less. I wanted to show you how much you mean to me. Rachel smiled, resting her head against his chest. You've already shown me, Ethan. Every day, in everything you do. As the celebration continued late into the night, Ethan and Rachel found themselves surrounded by love and support. The townsfolk's warmth and camaraderie reminded them of the community they had built together, a community that had become their family. Later, as they walked home hand in hand, Rachel looked up at Ethan with a playful smile. So, what's next for us, Mr. Cole? Ethan chuckled, pulling her closer. Well, Mrs. Cole-to-be, I think it's time we start planning a wedding. And after that, the sky's the limit. Rachel laughed, her heart full of hope and joy. As long as we're together, I'm ready for anything. The town of Willow Creek buzzed with excitement as preparations for Ethan and Rachel's wedding reached their peak. The couple had decided to make their celebration a community event, inviting everyone who had played a part in their journey. The venue, an old barn on the Harper property, lovingly restored and decorated by the townsfolk. The barn's wooden beams were draped with soft white fabric and twinkling lights, while wildflowers in mason jars adorned every table. Ben and Lucy had spent weeks coordinating the setup, and Claire's diner had become the unofficial headquarters for planning. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a testament to the love and unity that had transformed both Ethan and the town. On the morning of the wedding, the air was filled with anticipation. Rachel woke early, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and nerves. Claire and Lucy helped her into her dress, a vintage-inspired gown with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt that perfectly complemented her natural elegance. You look beautiful, Lucy said, her eyes shining. Ethan's going to cry when he sees you. Rachel laughed, though her own eyes brimmed with emotion. I hope he does. It's only fair after all the tears I've shed. Meanwhile, Ethan was getting ready at Ben's garage, where Nathan had taken charge as best man. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, Ethan looked every bit the picture of a man ready to start a new chapter in his life. Nervous? Nathan teased as he adjusted Ethan's tie. More than I've ever been, Ethan admitted, his voice tinged with emotion. But it's a good kind of nervous. Good, Nathan said, clapping him on the shoulder. Because you're about to marry the best woman I've ever met. And I've met a lot of women. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. Thanks, Nathan. That means a lot. As the ceremony began, the barn filled with the soft strains of a string quartet, their music blending seamlessly with the sounds of nature outside. Guests from all over Willow Creek and beyond had gathered, their faces glowing with joy and anticipation. Ben, who had become like a father to Rachel, walked her down the aisle. His eyes were misty as he whispered, "You've made me proud, Rachel." Ethan's a lucky man. Rachel squeezed his arm, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you, Ben. I wouldn't be here without you. At the altar, Ethan's breath hitched as he saw Rachel approach. She looked radiant, her smile lighting up the room. For a moment, everything else faded away. It was just the two of them, their love anchoring them amidst the whirlwind of emotions. Standing under a rustic arch, adorned with flowers, Ethan and Rachel exchanged vows that they had written themselves. Their words were simple yet profound, reflecting the journey they had taken together. Rachel, Ethan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. You've shown me what it means to love and be loved. You've taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the depth of our connections. I promise to cherish you, to support you, and to grow with you every day of our lives. Rachel's eyes glistened as she replied, Ethan, you came into my life when I least expected it, and you turned my world upside down in the best way. You've shown me that love is about trust, forgiveness, and courage. I promise to stand by you, to believe in you, and to share every moment of this beautiful journey together. As they exchanged rings, a ripple of emotion swept through the crowd. It wasn't just a union of two people. It was a celebration of resilience, love, and the power of community. After the ceremony, the barn was transformed into a lively reception hall. Tables overflowed with food, prepared by Claire and other townsfolk, while a local band played upbeat tunes that had everyone dancing. Lucy delivered a heartfelt speech, recounting her memories of Ethan and Rachel's blossoming relationship. You two have shown me that love isn't just about grand gestures. It's about the little things, the everyday moments that build a life together. Thank you for inspiring all of us. Nathan followed with a speech that was equal parts humorous and touching. Ethan may have started this journey to test someone else, but in the end, he tested himself, and he passed with flying colors. Here's to a lifetime of love and laughter. Ethan and Rachel shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying to a melody that seemed to echo the rhythm of their hearts. The townsfolk joined in, turning the dance floor into a joyful celebration of love and unity. As the evening progressed, a black car pulled up to the barn, drawing curious glances. To everyone's surprise, Ethan's parents stepped out, their expressions a mixture of hesitance and hope. They had heard about the wedding, and despite their strained relationship with Ethan, decided to come. Ethan approached them cautiously, his emotions swirling. His mother, her eyes glistening with tears, spoke first. We didn't want to miss this, Ethan. We're proud of you. For a moment, Ethan was silent. Then he embraced them both, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you for coming," he said softly. "It means a lot." Rachel joined them, her warm smile bridging the gap. "Welcome to Willow Creek. We're glad you're here." As the night wound down, Ethan and Rachel stood outside the barn, watching the stars twinkle above. The guests had gathered for a final toast, their glasses raised in unison. "To Ethan and Rachel," Nathan declared, his voice carrying over the crowd. "May your love continue to inspire us all." As the crowd cheered, Ethan and Rachel shared a quiet moment together. "This is just the beginning," Ethan said, his voice filled with conviction. Rachel smiled, leaning into him. "And what a beautiful beginning it is." The morning sun cast a golden hue over the rolling hills of Willow Creek as Ethan and Rachel sat on the porch of their modest yet welcoming home. A stack of papers rested on the small wooden table between them, detailing the plans for their most ambitious project yet, the Willow Foundation. "We've come a long way," Ethan said, tracing the foundation's logo on the document. "A tree with deep roots and flourishing branches. But this is only the beginning." Rachel smiled, her hand resting gently on his. "It's not just about us anymore. It's about everyone who believed in us and helped us get here." The Willow Foundation was their dream come to life. A nonprofit organization dedicated to revitalizing struggling towns, providing educational opportunities, and fostering sustainable development. Their vision was clear: to create lasting change in communities like Willow Creek, ensuring no one was left behind. The first step was to secure funding and support. Ethan leveraged his connections in the corporate world, reaching out to former colleagues and philanthropists who shared his vision. At a high-profile charity event in Manhattan, Ethan and Rachel presented their initiative to a room full of influential individuals. Ethan's speech was heartfelt, resonating with the audience. "I once believed that success was measured in profits and possessions," he began, his voice steady. "But the people of Willow Creek taught me a different lesson. That true success lies in the impact we have on others' lives. The Willow Foundation is our way of giving back, of paying forward the kindness and support we've received." Rachel added her perspective, sharing personal stories of the transformative power of education and community. By the end of the night, they had secured generous pledges and a newfound sense of momentum. Back in Willow Creek, Ethan and Rachel assembled a team to help run the foundation. Nathan came on board as the Director of Strategic Partnerships, bringing his business acumen and unyielding wit to the table. "You couldn't do this without me," Nathan joked during their first meeting. "Someone has to keep you grounded." Detective Laura Green also joined the initiative, using her investigative skills to identify communities in need and potential barriers to progress. Her no-nonsense attitude balanced the team's optimism, ensuring their efforts were both practical and impactful. Lucy, now a college student pursuing art and community development, contributed her creativity by designing promotional materials and organizing events. The foundation's first major undertaking was building a new school in the neighboring town of Pine Hollow. The town had faced years of economic decline, and its only school was in desperate need of repair. Rachel spearheaded the project, working closely with local educators to design a curriculum that emphasized creativity, critical thinking, and practical skills. Ethan oversaw the construction, ensuring the building was modern, sustainable, and equipped with state-of-the-art facilities. During the groundbreaking ceremony, the townsfolk gathered to witness the symbolic start of a brighter future. Rachel's voice trembled with emotion as she addressed the crowd. "This isn't just a school," she said. "It's a place where dreams will take root and grow." It's a promise to our children that their future matters." The applause was thunderous, a testament to the hope the foundation had already begun to inspire. Despite their initial success, the journey was not without challenges. Bureaucratic red tape, delayed construction, and funding shortfalls threatened to derail the project. Ethan faced criticism from skeptics who questioned his motives, while Rachel struggled with the emotional toll of balancing her personal life and professional responsibilities. One particularly difficult day, Ethan found Rachel sitting on the porch, her head in her hands. He sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Talk to me," he said gently. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if we can't do this? What if we fail these kids?" Ethan took her hand, his gaze steady. "We won't, because we're not doing this alone. We have a team, a community, and each other. And that's enough to move mountains." Rachel smiled through her tears, finding strength in his unwavering belief. As the school neared completion, the people of Pine Hollow rallied together, volunteering their time and skills to bring the project to life. Farmers donated fresh produce for construction workers, artisans painted murals to brighten the school's halls, and families contributed whatever they could. The day of the ribbon-cutting ceremony was one of celebration and pride. Children ran through the halls, marveling at the bright classrooms and new books. Parents expressed their gratitude, their eyes brimming with hope. Ethan and Rachel stood at the entrance, watching the scene unfold. "This is what it's all about," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Rachel nodded. "One town at a time." The success of the Pine Hollow School project drew national attention. News outlets featured stories about the Willow Foundation, highlighting Ethan and Rachel's work and the impact it had on struggling communities. Invitations to speak at conferences and events poured in. At one such event, held at a prestigious university, Rachel delivered a speech that moved the audience to tears. "Our story isn't unique," she said. "It's a story of resilience, of people coming together to create something greater than themselves. And it's a story that can happen anywhere, if we choose to invest in each other." Amid their work, Ethan and Rachel found moments to reflect on their journey. They often visited the fountain in Willow Creek, where their love story had truly begun. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if we hadn't met?" Rachel asked one evening, her voice soft. "All the time," Ethan replied, his eyes shining with gratitude. "And every time, I thank whatever force brought me to that garage." Rachel laughed, leaning into him. "I guess we owe Ben more than we realized." As the Willow Foundation expanded, so did its ambitions. Ethan and Rachel envisioned a network of schools, community centers, and sustainable businesses, each one a beacon of hope for the people it served. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, but they were undeterred. Together, they had built something far greater than themselves, a legacy of love, compassion, and transformation that would endure for generations. The grand ballroom of the Hilton Hotel in New York City sparkled under the glow of crystal chandeliers. Tables adorned with elegant floral arrangements and polished silverware were set for an evening of celebration and recognition. This was the annual National Philanthropy Gala, a gathering of the nation's most impactful leaders in charity and social innovation. For Ethan and Rachel, it was a defining moment. As they entered hand in hand, the buzz of conversation around the room shifted. People whispered their names with admiration. Ethan Cole, the former tech mogul turned philanthropist, and Rachel Carter, the schoolteacher who had inspired a movement. Their Willow Foundation had been nominated for the prestigious Excellence in Community Transformation Award, a testament to the work they had done in revitalizing struggling towns. Despite their success, Ethan and Rachel felt a mixture of pride and humility. This wasn't just their moment. It was a moment for every person who had believed in their mission. As they waited for the evening's events to begin, Ethan and Rachel couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The quiet streets of Willow Creek, the laughter of children in the new Pine Hollow School, the tearful gratitude of families whose lives had been changed. It all felt like a dream. "I still can't believe we're here," Rachel said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "Do you ever feel like we're just two small-town dreamers who stumbled into something bigger than ourselves?" Ethan smiled, his hand resting on hers. "Every day. But I think that's what makes it real. We didn't set out to change the world. We just wanted to make life better for a few people. And somehow, that grew into this." When the time came for Ethan and Rachel to take the stage, the applause was thunderous. Rachel stepped forward first, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Our journey began in a small town called Willow Creek," she said. "It started with simple acts of kindness, listening, helping, believing in each other. And those acts created ripples that grew into waves of change. What we've learned is that real transformation doesn't require billions of dollars or grand gestures. It requires heart, persistence, and the courage to care." Ethan followed, his tone earnest and reflective. "I once thought success was measured by the size of your bank account or the recognition of your peers. But my time in Willow Creek taught me that true success is measured in the lives you touch. It's in the opportunities you create, the hope you inspire, and the love you share." As they finished, the room erupted in applause, many in the audience visibly moved by their words. When the time came to announce the winner of the Excellence in Community Transformation Award, the tension in the room was palpable. The host opened the envelope, his smile widening, "And the award goes to the Willow Foundation." The crowd rose to their feet as Ethan and Rachel made their way back to the stage. Rachel clutched Ethan's arm, her emotions barely contained. As they accepted the award, Ethan turned to the audience with a heartfelt message. "This isn't just for us," he said, holding the trophy aloft. "It's for every teacher who sees the potential in a struggling student, every mechanic who gives a second chance to someone starting over, and every small town that refuses to give up on its future. This award is a reminder that together we can do extraordinary things." The after-party was a lively affair, filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Ethan and Rachel mingled with other attendees, exchanging ideas and forming new partnerships for the foundation. Nathan, ever the social butterfly, regaled the crowd with stories of Willow Creek's quirky charm, while Detective Green spoke passionately about the importance of community safety and support. Lucy, now a rising star in the art world, unveiled a series of paintings inspired by the people of Willow Creek. Her work drew admiration and sparked conversations about the intersection of art and social change. Back in Willow Creek, the townsfolk awaited Ethan and Rachel's return with eager anticipation. They had followed the gala through news broadcasts, cheering as the foundation's name was announced. The entire town gathered in the square for a surprise celebration, complete with banners, lights, and a makeshift stage. When Ethan and Rachel arrived, the crowd erupted into cheers. Old Bill, the mechanic who had given Ethan his first job in the town, stepped forward to speak. "When this young man showed up at my shop, I never imagined he'd bring so much light to our little town," Bill said, his voice thick with emotion. "Ethan and Rachel didn't just give us hope. They showed us how to believe in ourselves again. And for that, we'll always be grateful." As the evening wore on, Ethan and Rachel addressed the crowd, sharing their plans for the future tour of the Willow Foundation. "We've only just begun," Rachel said, her voice carrying a note of determination. "There are so many communities out there like ours, filled with people who just need a chance to thrive." Ethan added, "And we want you all to be a part of this journey, because the spirit of Willow Creek isn't just about one town. It's about what happens when people come together to create something greater than themselves." Their words were met with resounding applause, a testament to the unity and resilience they had inspired. As the celebration continued, Ethan and Rachel found a quiet moment near the fountain where their story had begun. The stars above seemed brighter than ever, casting a soft glow over the square. "Do you think we've done enough?" Rachel asked, leaning into Ethan's shoulder. Ethan smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "Enough to make a difference, absolutely. But enough to stop? Never. This is just the beginning of what we can achieve together." Rachel nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else." The Willow Foundation became a beacon of hope, its impact spreading across the nation. Ethan and Rachel's story inspired countless others to follow their example, proving that love, compassion, and determination could change the world. Their journey, once fueled by doubt and secrecy, had blossomed into a powerful testament to the strength of community and the transformative power of authentic love. And so, under the stars of Willow Creek, surrounded by friends, family, and a community they had grown to call their own, Ethan and Rachel embraced the future, a future they would continue to build together, one step at a time. Sometimes, life surprises us in the most unexpected ways, teaching us that love, hope, and second chances can change everything. Ethan and Rachel's journey is a testament to the power of believing in people, even when the odds seem impossible. But what about you? If you were in Ethan's shoes, would you risk it all to test love? Or if you were Rachel, could you forgive someone who hid so much from you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And hey, this story doesn't end here. There's so much more to explore about love, forgiveness, and finding purpose. So, if you're ready for the next heartfelt journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what's coming next, because the best stories are the ones that bring us together. See you soon.